This conference will now be recorded.
Let's see, go to settings.
Is it Android?
Yeah, an old Samsung.
You should be able to swipe down to the top.
Oh, I just go in
Oh, okay. No problem.
But it's probably quick.
This conference will
I'd like to
now
start
be
by thanking
recorded.
the Sherman Campbell Funeral and Cremation Services for making their facility here in Newport available to us. A special thank you to Carly for giving up your Saturday night as well as your Friday night yesterday to help us out with all the IT stuff. Thank you to the candidates, Mr. Smiley, Mr. Mayor, for giving the voters your Saturday night, your shirt oil. The format for tonight is you'll be asked questions already mailed to you. Any new questions that may arrive, which the North Chamber felt you would be able to answer, and then any clarification questions that have arrived from the public during the debate. You'll have 7 minutes each. It'll be timed. You'll be notified when you have 1 minute left, and I promise you will be cut off at 7 minutes. The questions are compiled, the emails sent by the public, and we have opening statements, starting with you, Mr. Smiley.
Well, I'd just like to take a minute to thank the North Mahre County Chamber and the Selkirk Sun and Sherman Funeral Home here for the opportunity to speak to the public, for Paul for coming down. And it was an enjoyable trip down, and I think that it will be informative to the voters.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to Sherman Campbell Funeral Home, Selkirk Sun, North Mahre County Chamber of Commerce. Everybody's taken a Saturday night to be here and do audio and video and everything. And thank you to Brian for coming down. He drove a lot farther than I did. I'd just like to say I'm looking forward to tonight's discussion, and I hope we have some things to share with the voters of Mahre County.
Gentlemen, I would like you to direct yourselves to the microphone because that's where the camera is as well.
Okay.
Pretend I'm not here.
Okay.
Mr. Smiley, question number 1, sir.
Okay. Go ahead.
What is your stance on the proposed smelter? If approved, how many full-time employees will it support upon completion?
And by far, this is the most repeated question I've had since I announced for candidate. It was the first one I received within minutes of announcing that I was running for a campaign. I think that there are those around that have an agenda that want to pigeonhole us into one camp or the other. And I see that in the county, that there's a pigeonhole. You're either pro-smelter or you're against the smelter. Throughout the campaign, I've tried to maintain a consistent answer to that question, and I'm going to continue that. I'm totally in support of any legal business or even industry that wants to come to our county and offer services or build a legal product here in the county. That's been my answer throughout the campaign, especially if they can meet already stringent state requirements and permitting requirements and regulations, or even in the case of the smelter, federal regulations as well. I do not think it is the business of the county commissioners or even anyone in county government to pick and choose what is a politically acceptable business in the county. Nor do I think it is ethical for candidates for commissioner to take a stand over one legal business over another. I just don't think that's right, to pick and choose or to make applications for zoning or permitting into a popularity contest in the county. So I just don't think that's right. So I'm going to say again, I'm totally in support of any legal business that wants to come into the county. Where does it stop? Is an ORV park okay? Maybe not a wrecking yard, is that okay? Maybe not. A butcher shop, a meat packing plant, maybe not, maybe. Where does this stop? Some have brought up the idea of a hog farm here to come into the county. And I think that's an effort to stir up emotions. Given the price of real estate here these days and the distance to the nearest cornfield, I don't think there's any hazard of that. I don't think that's gonna happen. The whole discussion to me reveals a clear distinction among all of us candidates. I am not pro-business. I am not pro-industry or whatever. If folks want to come here and they have money and they want to build a house, they want to come enjoy our clean air, our clean water, beautiful place to live, they want to retire here, that's great as far as I'm concerned. What I am for is freedom and liberty and opportunity for all of us here. What am I against? I am against those that would deny freedom and opportunity to others, even to the next generation, because they don't fit into their vision of what the county should look like. Can't we figure out a way to succeed and get along while at the same time preserving freedoms and liberties in the county? I think we can, and I think we should. Do our elected officials really want to poison our air and our clean water and our soil, or turn the county into a big development? I don't think so. I'm not convinced of that. I don't think that's what they want to do. How about a little understanding? How about we agree that I won't always agree with what my neighbor does, nor can I always control his behavior. If we are to preserve any freedom and opportunities in this place, we need to learn to get along with one another. And if we're going to have that freedom, right? Correct? And that leads to the next question. I'm done with that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, what is your stance on the proposed smelter? And again, if approved, how many full-time employees will it support upon completion?
I have a stance on the smelter and I do not support it. I think that as part of the government, the county commissioners have an obligation to represent all interests, but especially I think one of the key things in our county, which we all enjoy, our environment, our clean air, our clean water, that we can go fishing. That starts to bring in some other issues that the county commissioners need to take into consideration when this type of project is proposed. Having done some research on the project over the last couple of years, attending some of the public meetings here in Newport, either in Spokane or I can't remember if it's Spokane or over in Priest River. Interestingly enough, at those meetings, especially the one in Newport, over 200 people stood up to speak, and I believe there were 5 in support of it. So there, at least at that meeting, the community came out and absolutely against. If we are commissioners who are representing the people, at that meeting the people spoke. There weren't many people out, even that came over from Idaho, that were in support of it. They're the downwinders from all of this. On the smelter itself, build out would be about 400 jobs, would create about 400 jobs. Once it was fully operational and completed fully operational, it's slated to employ up to about 170 people. Its current facility in Mississippi operates at 100 people. and it's a similar sized plant as to what was being proposed here. We think of the environmental impact. In their proposal, PacWest presented that they had a plant in Mississippi, they had a plant in Norway, and a plant in Germany. And they referenced that the plants in Norway and Germany were fairly similarly situated to a population area as was being proposed here. Interestingly enough, when you go to world rankings of environmental control, the US ranks 33rd in the world for environmental regulation. Germany ranks 6th, Norway 10th. Not quite certain how those rankings come into being, meaning what are all of the components that are measured, the importance given to any one measurement. But that's a pretty big drop from 6th and 10th in the world to 33rd. And if they can operate the plants in Germany and Norway at those efficiencies or lack of reductions in pollution, why can't they do it here? Another issue is where the current administration in Washington, D.C. is stripping back and stripping away our environmental protection laws and support thereof, or ways to enforce those laws. Monitoring for a lot of environmental issues right now in America is suspended. Industry doesn't have to monitor its output of emissions right now because of COVID-19. If the current administration were to be reelected, I think we could see further degradation of the environmental laws. What would that mean to this operation if it were to come into Mahre County with even lower requirements? Other factors to consider. Mississippi, Norway, and Germany are all situated in areas that have a fairly strong and regular airflow. And we know our air in this area stagnates. It can stagnate 12 months a year. It's not just in the winter that it stagnates when there's an inversion. We all get to experience the smoke coming from either our own fires or even from California and coming up here and sitting. What's going to happen to our county when that occurs? Is the plant going to shut down? We saw no guidelines from them as to what would be the air factor qualities from the outside environment that would impact their decision to operate the plant or not operate it. Other factors include, when you look at where they're situated in Norway and Germany, they are in industrial areas. They've got full means to contain waste that comes off of those physical facilities, the storing of the coal and chips and things like that. Not proposed here. It's going to be outside, it's going to run off the property, it goes into our groundwater. So I'm not in support of it. That doesn't mean I'm anti-business. I believe that we should have a working partnership between business and the government, our government, whether it's local, county, or state or federal. But I don't think this is the right fit for that business. And thank you.
Thank you. Question 2, Mr. Mayor, you're up.
Okay.
What do you know about the Washington Growth Management Act and Mahre County Comprehensive Plan?
I'm getting schooled on both of those. I think, as Brian mentioned about the smelter when he first threw his hat in the ring in this race, all of a sudden that was the first question, and this was one of the first questions that came to me also. So I've been trying to learn a little bit of history quickly of the GMA. It was enacted in the legislative session of 1989 and 90 in Washington. Mahre County signed on to meet it December 28th of 1990. Currently in Washington, 18 counties are required to fully meet the GMA guidelines. 10 counties, Mahre, one of them, is willingly opted in, and 11 counties have opted out and are only meeting certain parts of it. Those 11 counties that have opted out are counties that would be very similar to ours, population size, growth size, things like that. So Ponderay County is stuck. We missed an opportunity in 2014 to pull out. There was an option given by the state legislature. Ferry County did, and got an approval to go into that group of now 11 counties that have opted out. So here we are. We've got Growth Management Act, and we need to be compliant with it. I think something to remember about the Growth Management Act is that its main goal is to provide guidance for the planning of population growth and the associated development therewith. Housing, businesses, recreation, how do we protect our environment, whether it's lands or air or water or all of them. It originally focused on the fastest growing counties. And one of the stated goals of the GMA, when you get in and read the document and you read some of the history of it by people who have written about it, one of the purposes of it was to move the management of land issues and development issues to the local level, to take it out of Olympia. Of course, we are now 30 years later, there could be some debate as to whether that original stated goal has been kept or it's been encroached on. But that's one of the original stated intents from the state legislature. The GMA covers 13 areas that the counties have to consider when they develop their comprehensive plan. I won't list them. It requires that the counties update their comprehensive plan, and I got this in a conversation with 2 different people at the Department of Commerce. I've spoken with Dave Anderson and a gentleman by the name of, I forgot his last name, of Ben. 8 years is the cycle. It adjusts for different counties, such as if your county needs to update kind of right when the census takes place. So they don't want you to, like right now, some of the counties that are required to have gotten an extension because the state doesn't want to force them to use data from 2010 in 2019. So they're allowing them to see what the results are of the 2020 census, and then they'll have to have their comprehensive plans updated. But generally speaking, it's every 8 years that the counties need to do that. And as we know right now, Ponderay County is not in compliance. Our last update was technically 2015, but that was a revision, not necessarily a full update. Without us being in compliance, basically what we lose is we lose the ability to apply for funding for grants and things from the state and even from the federal government. So there's a quick overview of the GMA. Our comprehensive plan, I see it deficient in these areas, and when I say I see it deficient in the last document that I had access to on the county website, which is a May 2020 draft proposal for the update. And I see the removal of all currently what are listed as public lands into either, on that document, they're listed into just rural lands. I see that as a problem because under public lands, there's no industrial use allowed. But if all of those public lands are put into R5, 10, 20, or 40, they immediately become available and optional for industrial use. The county currently doesn't have any zoned industrial areas. That is part of the GMA. Locate in your county areas that fit industrial use. Our county hasn't done that. It wasn't there in the May 2020 draft. I think there's a lack of planning for public spaces. If our county is going to probably continue to grow in population size, and with the added population, there are going to be more use put on recreation areas, hiking trails, biking trails, things like that. I don't see much evidence of the,
You're at 1 minute, sir.
okay, thank you, of the comprehensive plan touching on those. And those are areas that actually attract families to relocate, for business to relocate. Those are considered quality, what's the term? Quality of life issues. And we are deficient in those. We don't offer a lot of good public spaces and parks and recreation areas that are really developed in our county. Yes, we have some great areas out in the woods and that, but you tend to need to be a hunter or such to do that. And I think we need to, as a county, also identify lands that should be removed from development to retain those in keeping the rural atmosphere of our county. And I'll leave there since I think I'm right at my 1 minute.
You are. Thank you so
Or my
much.
0 minute.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Smiley, what do you know about the Washington Growth Management Act and Ponderay County Comprehensive Plan?
What do I know about the Growth Management Act? By the way, I have learned since attending some of the county commissioner meetings that the true skill in being a county commissioner is understanding acronyms and understanding their secret language of acronyms. And so I will use, as Paul did, the GMA. It is, as Paul stated, a state law passed in the 90s. And I remember that when it came down the pike. Like a lot of state laws, it puts the burden of enforcement and implementation on the local governments. In this case, the burden is to manage so-called growth, which invariably was always a big issue on the west side, even in the 90s. Not so much an issue here, but it could be. It requires local governments to identify and protect so-called natural areas and to have a plan in place for growth and urban growth, among other things. There's a lot in there, and I don't think it's worthwhile to go through everything it does. In my time on the Medellin Town Council, we spent some time on this. Since all local governments have to do this, even the towns abide by this. We identified our protected areas. We have some swamps there in town, and we came up with a map to prepare for our designated growth areas. Never mind that there has been no real growth in the population of Medellin in 40 years, okay? So, but by gosh, we got a plan and we got a map for it, okay? And this is part of the problem with state mandates, is they're kind of one size fits all. And that's part of the problem with the GMA. As Paul says, in theory, it's supposed to allow local control over planning for growth and the protection of natural areas. It is supposed to allow those decisions to be made on a local level. But that's the rub. Under GMA, local government must plan. They must. I remember when it came to Ponderay County, I remember the discussion about opting out or not complying. I remember that discussion very well, and I participated in some of that discussion. Like in many rural areas, I think most of the people in Ponderay County have not been enthusiastic supporters of zoning and planning of any kind. I think we can agree about that, and like many rural areas. And because of that, because most people aren't enthusiastic about it, I think it has given a foot in the door for a minority of folks, both in the county and outside the county, who favor more regulation and more control of land use to have an undue influence on the local plan. And read carefully what I said there. Because we haven't taken part, I think it's allowed others to have undue control. Said another way, local government, like nature, abhors a vacuum. If the majority of this county fails to participate in land use decisions, and I think they have, I think the majority in this county have failed to participate, then a vocal minority with an agenda will have an undue influence over that so-called local comprehensive plan. And again, I think that has happened. I think the majority has failed to participate, and I think a minority has had an undue influence over our comprehensive plan. And I think that is why we have a dysfunctional land use plan in this county, and I think it is dysfunctional. I think we could all agree that we can look at it and say there's a lot, even as Paul mentioned, we need to plan for industrial areas. We just need to. And so I think it is dysfunctional. The system has failed. The solution is twofold. First, we need our elected officials, and those include those that serve on the planning commission at the behest of the commissioners, to have confidence that they represent the whole district they serve. And notice I said whole. And that they need to advocate, and I would point out that word to you, they need to advocate for the best plan for the majority of people in the county. Okay? They need to advocate for the best plan for the majority of the people in the county. It is always the case that outspoken vocal groups will show up at public meetings with an agenda seeking to influence the outcome. We've all seen this. If you serve in local government, you serve in any kind of a meeting, there are those that are going to show up with an agenda because those that are busy about their life don't. And so I think we need our elected officials to have confidence they represent the whole county. Second solution is to find a way to get broader participation in the decisions that are made in planning and updating the comprehensive plan. Okay, I think we haven't had that broad participation. Even at the same time, well, a lot of folks in the county are not enthusiastic at all about planning and land use, period. That's not what they're excited about. Put simply, I can tell you right now,
1 minute, sir.
without any doubt in my mind, the comprehensive land use plan for District 3 does not represent the values and priorities of the majority of the people in that district. It does not. And in that way, the system has failed. And so I think we need to focus on those two solutions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. And you're still back on the hot seat.
Okay?
I'm going to combine, we learned from yesterday, I'm going to combine 3 questions into one.
Oh, great.
Oh, you're.
Oh, I
I
am.
wanted to do that. You read my mind.
I know. I feel you guys can rise up to the
Okay.
task.
Does that mean we get 21 minutes?
Oh,
How about, no. Mr. Smiley,
yes.
3-part question. What makes you qualified for this position as commissioner? What is your educational, high school and college background? And what jobs have you had in your life?
Okay, very good. And this is literally in my notes, that the next 3 questions, this is what my notes say, I think are the most important, and I think they all go together. Okay? And so I'm glad you lumped them together. And I'm going to answer them directly with some detail, and if I have some time left, I'd like to kind of speak to the broader issue of qualifications. Okay? First, I'm going to speak to the question about what makes me qualified for the position as county commissioner. First, plain and simple, I live in District 3. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a registered voter. As far as I'm concerned, if anybody meets those 3 qualifications, go for it. You know, if you feel like you want to do that, you go for it. And let the people decide about the qualifications beyond that. I was born and raised in the county. I've chosen to make my home here. I raised my family here. My parents are here. My wife's parents are here. I have sisters and nieces and nephews dotting the county up and down all over the place. I've operated and owned a business in the county in one way or another for most of my adult life. I've tried to serve this place and make it a better place for many years. I've been active in my church. I've served as an elder, a teaching pastor. I teach Sunday school. I'm active in the kids group, North Ponderay Valley Awana group leader. I've served in the town council of Medellin for over 10 years. And I think my life experience growing up in the county, working and serving in the county has given me a good preparation to serve as commissioner. But again, I say, let the voters decide that, if I'm qualified for that position. Do you want me to just go right on to the next one?
Move on, sir.
Okay, the question was asked, what is my education, high school or college or otherwise? Well, I am a homeschooled kid, believe it or not, probably one of the first generation of homeschoolers in the county. I know growing up that I never met another homeschool kid, so I was a very strange child. And the last time I attended any formal public school was second grade here in Newport. We used to call it BB Hill School in 1978, I think, and that was second grade. So we could spend a lot of time here about educational theory and practice, and even how much the homeschooling movement has changed since the 1980s, since my parents decided to do that. But I'm proud of the preparation that my parents gave me in my education, and I will defend it. They didn't just teach me facts, they didn't just give me a love of reading, which they did do. That isn't the only thing. They didn't give me a love of literature, which I really do enjoy, a love of history, a love of culture, of the outdoors, nature. They also taught me how to learn, not to just absorb information, but how to learn. They taught me to think for myself, critically. They taught me how to work hard, how to be self-motivated, how to serve others. They also taught me that learning never stops. Again, we could go on and on about that, but I think the point of the question is the grade level I have achieved. I think that's the point of the question. And I would say I have achieved a 12th grade level, a high school grade level. Even though I have no formal diploma or even no GED, somewhere along the line that just failed to be a priority. And so I think that's the point of the question, and I would say that I have a 12th grade high school education level. Personally, I have never desired to do anything before that I felt I wasn't completely prepared to do. And never in my life have I said, well, you know what, I'm not prepared to do that thing I want to do. And so I would say that is the same about this position I seek now. I'm fully confident I'm prepared for this position. And again, I'd like to speak to that. What makes that position, what makes us prepared for this position at a greater issue? Next question is, what jobs have you had in your old adult life? I seem to have a problem in this area with jobs. My wife would wholeheartedly agree with this. I think most of my adult life I've held down at least 2 jobs, oftentimes 3 or 4, depending on how you count them. And at 16, I had my first official job working for my dad's business, which was White's Boots in Spokane, 3 days a week. And at that time, I was also homeschooling, of course, the rest of the week. And I was also raising cattle. Parents got me interested in that. And by that age, I had pretty good herd of polled Herefords. And by the time I was 18, I was a journeyman bootmaker for White's. And I sold my cows, and I took the profits, and I bought my first rental house in Medellin Falls. And I continued, of course, with that and making boots and dabbling in cows. By the mid-90s, my dad had retired and sold his business, and him and I started getting into the sawmill and wood products business in a serious way. And of course, I was still doing the other jobs. And I think by about 2000, I finally quit my day job making boots. And I've made my living at Smiley Lumber ever since then, primarily. We manufacture, retail, wholesale, and install wood flooring from local timber products throughout the U.S. Besides that, there is the rental houses. I now have 3.
1 minute, sir.
And there's the pastoring of the church, which I mentioned. I've done that for 10 years. And of course, there is the Medellin Town Council. I'm serving on the Medellin Town Council.
Thank you very much, sir. Well answered. Mr. Mayor, same questions. What makes you qualified for this position as commissioner? What is your education level? And what jobs have you had in your adult life?
So what qualifies someone to be a county commissioner? I think is a tough question. There are a few, especially elected jobs that you don't get any other place to, on the job training other than once you're there. So you're looking, not having been in the job, I'm not quite certain exactly what the skill set is supposed to be, but I'll take a stab at it. I think that communication is a key factor. You need to be able to communicate not only with your fellow commissioners, but to state officials over in Olympia, regional officials, but mainly with your fellow commissioners and with all of our constituents, not just the voters from your district, but the voters from the whole county, because that is who you represent. That means, yes, you get to talk a lot, but you'd better listen a hell of a lot too. And so what have I learned? What qualifies me in that area? Life experience. I've traveled internationally as a competitive athlete, a coach, and as a competition official, in both in North America and actually Japan and Europe and New Zealand. So I've learned to, sometimes you have to communicate with sign language and body language. Other times you get by with broken English. I got to spend 10 days with somebody. He was Japanese, I'm American. Our common language was German. And we spent 10 days together. I was mentoring him as becoming an official. And we learned to communicate that way and listen. Another thing I think that helps is being able to assess multiple factors. As a county official and commissioner, a problem is going to land on your desk, and it's not going to be the one little thread that you have to figure out. When you pull it, there's going to be 5 or 6 or 10 others. And I think as commissioners, it's going to be helpful if you can quickly identify all of the threads that are going to be pulled, or at least a large portion of them, and then quickly assess which ones are going to be the most important, and you need to address those immediately, and then which other ones can be left for later on. Some of the later ones might require exactly what happened with some of the first ones you address. Another thing, all my life experience, especially in sports, as Brian said about his schooling, it taught me how to find information, how to go about finding what are the best practices, what are the rules, what are the procedures, and then how to best implement them. So education, I have a high school diploma from Natchez Valley High School here in Washington, and a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Washington over in Seattle. My Bachelor of Arts is in German literature, rather ironic. That's how I learned German. While at the UW, I also focused and almost came away with a minor in astronomy. But I love math, so I had a lot of physics and math and astronomy courses while I was there also. I have certifications as a Red Cross First Aid. I'm a professional ski instructor of America. I have an international alpine coach certification, also an international alpine official certification. Obviously, these are very, almost you could say esoteric, but they're very niche, but they're like, as a course inspector, there are only 6 of us in the nation. I'm one of those 6 that's an international level certified course inspector. It's expired, but I basically had an EMT certification for when I was working on a fishing vessel. I was the chief medical officer on the boat, along with other things there. And then it's expired, but I also have a whitewater rescue technician certification for my dabbling in whitewater kayaking. And then what jobs? This kind of ties back into the other two. The jobs, I'll just quickly list more so the areas. I've been self-employed. I've been a professional athlete, a non-amateur athlete, and legal expert witness, an executive director for 2 nonprofits. I've worked in ski areas as base area manager. I've been a program director for ski clubs, summer river raft guide. I've worked in filming as a production assistant and location manager. I've worked in the fishing industry. I've been a cook. I've worked in heavy construction. I worked on I-90 when it was being done both over in Wallace and on Mercer Island when they sunk it there. I worked on the Mount Baker Tunnel when it was bored and for the new I-90. I've been a carpenter. I've worked harvest in the Aqua Valley, combine driver and mechanic, fruit picker, things like that. I've worked in warehouse and inventory,
1 minute,
and I've
sir.
worked in housing construction. All of those give me a broad range and experience of, basically, those could all be, parts of the economy that would work very well here. Maybe not fishing, at least fishing on the open seas. We don't have any salt water here. But all of those different experiences, either working alone on my own as a professional athlete, finding my own contracts and signing them, being a legal expert witness in ski areas, when litigation is filed against them. All of these, I think, have given me experiences which would be beneficial as a commissioner.
Very well. Next set, combining 2 this time. Mr. Mayor, you're up first.
Okay.
How many times have you attended the commissioners' meeting within the last 2 years? How many times have you attended the planning commissioners' meeting in Cusick?
In the last 2 years, at least half of that I could not attend because the commissioners have their meetings when I was working, and you just can't attend. So all of my attendance at these has basically been in the last 5 months when they have become online. And I've attended 3 of each virtually. It's kind of the odd thing there, you're running your campaign, you've got to do all these things, and you got to take care of your daily duties, and still, the meeting times are not beneficial for any county resident, even if you want to become a county commissioner. It's difficult to get to their meetings, and that is an area I think needs to be changed. I believe that we should see the commissioners starting to meet a couple of things. They should be meeting once each month in each district, so that all commissioners get to go to that district and meet and see people there. We should be I think we should move commissioner meetings to weekends and or evenings when more people can attend. I think that there should be an engagement with the schools. Civics is now a required course in the state of Washington. The county commissioners could work with both the tribe and the school districts to run some of the one meeting a month with the school that's part of their civics class, where now the students get to see government in process. And that could be part of the curriculum. What is it? What is one of the issues that the county commissioners are facing? Not one that's quick, but one that's going to take 2 or 3 or 4 months to work through. Now they get to see it happen. I think those are critical areas for both the commissioners and outreach to the community, but also we are educating our upcoming and our future commissioners. And I think that's where we'll stop with that.
Very good. Sir, I'm going to need you to move down towards the far end a little bit further and speak up just a little bit more.
Okay.
Spectators are having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Thank you for the
Mr. Smiley again.
Okay.
How many times have you attended the commissioners' meeting within the last 2 years? How many times have you attended the planning commissioners' meeting in Cusick?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that question real short and real direct, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the greater question of qualifications, because I think that's what it's getting at. I have attended in the last few months, the commissioner meeting twice. I reiterate what Paul said, it's really hard to get down there when you have a job. But I have gone down there twice, and of course we have the COVID thing, not making it any easier. I have not attended the planning commission meetings ever. I would have liked to as a candidate, but my understanding is they have not had a planning commission meeting since February. All of these last questions get at the question of what makes a good commissioner, I think, these last 3 or 4. Is it education? Is it experience, work life, work experience, life experience? Is it involvement with local government, experience in local government? And I don't want to diminish the importance of those things, but I don't think that gives a complete answer of what makes a good county commissioner. I would like to remind the voters again of what a commissioner is. The commissioners are an advocate. I used that word earlier. They are an advocate or representative of the people in local government. An advocate by Webster's is one who pleads the cause of another, okay? Or one who supports the interests or the cause of a group or a person, okay? We are a government by the people, for the people, right? In our local government, the commissioners represent and advocate for the people. That is their job. They go to the meetings, they represent the people. They have the final authority because they represent the people. The people are the government. Okay? An advocate does not represent his own views or opinions, right? Okay? Or even his own knowledge, but amplifies the opinions and the views of the people or person he represents. Okay? I've had this experience twice happen to me since serving on the Medellin Town Council. A person will come up to me in the community and say, I am so glad you're over there at the town council in the council meetings. Now I don't have to go because I know you will do the right thing, and I know you. Twice I've had that happen to me. The reason I don't have to take time out of my busy schedule and away from my family to attend to local government details is because I have an advocate in the courthouse I can trust. That is why I don't need to do those things, because I have elected somebody to represent me there. And I would just say right here, in the case of District 3, that person is somebody I do trust with integrity and ability. And so I haven't worried about it. And even in going to the county commissioners meetings, I have been reassured. I can't do anything here. These guys got it under control. The last thing we want as a representative or an advocate is an elitist, or as someone with their own agenda or policy, right? You don't ask somebody, go represent me, and then they represent their own views. Okay? Someone who is above the people is the last thing we want, who cannot relate with the issues and everyday struggle of the people they represent, correct? Okay? The Pend County Commissioner needs to be an expert in one thing. And again, I go back to these previous questions. They need to be an expert in one thing. And that thing is the concerns and struggles and issues facing the people of their district. They need to know what those are for their people in their district, and they need to represent them in local government. Right? I think so. That's it. Thank you.
Very well. Mr. Smiley. I am a farmer in Ponderay County and would like to know if you would support funding for the weed board if elected.
Okay, it's pretty simple and straightforward. I did listen last night to Phyllis answer this. Unlike her, I don't really know who this is that asked this, or what kind of operation you have as a farm here, or even how the weed board affects that. I don't know that much about how the weed board functions. At some point, I would love to meet this person and find out about their operation and find out how the weed board does affect their operation. And no doubt it does. I just don't have that information in front of me. I will go back and check in my budget, but I believe at least a portion of the budget for the weed board comes into the county earmarked to be spent on weed control. And you understand about our budget, a lot of the revenues that come into the county are earmarked that we have to spend them on accomplishing certain tasks. And I'm pretty certain that the budget for the weed board is that case, and that it is earmarked to be spent on weed control. So in that sense, we're gonna spend that on weed control. If we get the money earmarked that way, we're gonna spend it. And it's that simple. We're gonna do the best we can with it to provide that service in the most efficient means possible. But notice I said if we get the money. The state has just been hammered economically. And if I can use a farming analogy, the chickens have not all come home to roost yet, okay? The revenues from both the state and local and even federal level are probably gonna get hammered as well, but that hasn't come home to roost as of yet. So that said, I can't control what I can't control, even as a county commissioner. But I think we will do our level best to maintain that level of service, even in the face of reduced revenue from the state and other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
So, I've lived in the county 17 years, 15 years in my current location on Flowery Trail. And when I first moved in, I think actually since I moved in, I only have one neighbor that is common since I moved in. All the rest of the neighbors have, moved away, passed on. And so I've gotten to work with different neighbors over the time, over the last 15 years. When I first moved in, I had a group of us got together and we all cooperated with the weed board. And we were trying to, control noxious weeds. And so we worked with, we rented equipment. We got a co-op deal through the weed board on spray, and we did our applications, and we were actually making really good progress. And then my neighbors moved away, and now I have one neighbor who really deals with weeds, but I have a couple that don't. Another issue for me is the property I bought was from Dick and Betty Bosch, and happened to be right after I bought it, or right when I bought it, right before I bought it, is when they realigned Flowery Trail Road. So we have all of with new road construction, as we all know, we all get new weeds growing. And so I'm still dealing with weeds off the road 15 years later. And I believe the weed board is important. Noxious weeds, they're spreading back, not up, they're gone over my property, they've gone back to Stimson property, which is not even touching, that part of it isn't even touching the road. It's, quarter mile, half mile away. And now I face, at least one or two neighbors who have a fairly high weed load now, and now they're impacting two neighbors who are trying to be good about maintaining ours. I've worked with the weed board the last few years also. I've had them come in and spray. I myself have sprayed. one of the issues or difficulties I have is knowing that you're trying to do some agricultural work. How do we work with people who are trying to do organic growing and methods, whether it's for grass or for, vegetables and fruit, when most of the programs offered by the weed board are non-organic. To me, that is a future problem to be addressed, but I think it's an important one. Organic crop production continues to be one of the largest expanding portions of the food industry. And I think it's something that we could capitalize on here in our county. We've got a nice growing season, I think. So I believe the weed board should be supported. I agree with Brian. We don't know anything about what the final budgets are going to look like 6 months or a year from now, either for the county, for the state, or for the feds. I think that there's going to be a lot of cuts coming, and even with the projected county shortfall right now of about a $1 million shortfall, I think it's going to be a little bigger. And what do we do with, how do we cover especially the parts of the budget that aren't based on income that the county has, but they're based on grants that the county receives? When those get cut, there's nothing we can do but cut those areas. We can't make it up, and I don't think anybody wants to pay the difference in taxes. So I think the next 3 to 4 years are going to be really tough for the commissioners who are elected, and I don't envy any of them who do. But no, on the weed board, I support it. I believe it needs to be a vibrant part of our county government.
Thank you very much, sir. And now to the extra portion. Brace yourselves. Mr. Mayor, you have the slogan "Black Lives Matter" on a sign at your sign waving in Ione. These words are part of a political movement called Black Lives Matter. It has called for the complete defunding of law enforcement since May at least. It also called for elevating a specific sexual orientation with a specific skin color above all others. Why do you feel our local law enforcement must be defunded? And why does a sexual orientation or skin tone need to be held higher in value than all others?
Where do you start with that one? When we have in our society leaders of different political persuasions promoting what they believe in, what their supporters believe in, let's just step right to it. When the President of the United States tells white supremacists, stand back and stand down, where's the question on that? Why is he allowed to do that, yet I'm questioned about supporting blacks or supporting homosexuals? As a homosexual myself, I'm offended by that question. I've spent most of my life dealing with the very issues that Black Lives Matter do. Maybe not quite in the way they do, because I don't stick out quite because of lack of skin tone. But you try to be a professional athlete or an amateur athlete in America in the 1980s as a gay man. What are your chances? Not very good. I think everybody would agree with that. So I am not out there supporting them and saying that they're better than anything else. It's that they deserve the equal recognition. And having been somebody who was denied opposite opportunities because of my sexual orientation, I take it very personally when somebody says that, oh, I'm putting them over everybody else. No, I just want to get myself equal with straight white men. Okay? Probably, I don't know if it's a shock to anybody. I have never made qualms about my orientation in, I don't know, 20, 25 years, 30 years, yeah, 30, 35 years.
Would you like to move on to the question of why you
I-
feel law enforcement?
My continued answer will roll in that.
Okay.
We all subscribe to a number of beliefs, and we all end up having to, at some point, say yes when we really don't like all that's entailed in saying yes. I suppose that there are plenty who think that the 2017 tax reform was a good thing. How about that little detail that allows the very wealthy, the 1%, to forever, now get this is forever. Any year now that they lost money, they can go back and claim that as a deduction for the year that they make money. So they lost money, and maybe they lost $1 billion in 2010. They get to claim that $1 billion as a write-off against any year after 2010, now after 2017, that they make a profit. They claim it on 2021. They claim it again in 2022. They just get to recycle that $1 billion loss from 2010 forever. Do you think that's a fair tax code? But you know, when you signed it and you voted for the person who said, yeah, I'm going to support that, you got that too. When it's obvious from our incarceration rate in the nation, from our arrest rates, that the blacks of America are targeted, and then part of their stance is defund the police. I stand for the rights of the individual. No, I don't stand for defunding the police. That's their position. I'm standing for the rights of those people to not be so focused on and what would you call it? There's profile. Having been one who's been profiled myself, not long after Washington passed its state, we had marijuana was now legal. You want to know how many times I got stopped when I drove into Idaho? Nothing wrong. I wasn't speeding, but they found every reason in the book to pull me over, and 2 officers walk up to my car, one with a gun drawn. I just happened to have the look that they wanted. They were quite certain I was carrying pot. I'd get to open up my trunk. I'd get to have all my things gone through. Having never once smoked pot in my life, having never once bought it, having never once held a joint in my hand, I have an idea now of what black people go through. As a ski coach, black coaches are a very small minority in our profession. A good friend down in California, black men, a very good coach. He has checked into hotels, and when he checks in, he's made his reservation online. He walks up, and guess what the hotel does in that nice ski resort? They say that, oh, they lost his reservation. They don't have a room for him in their book. He has his confirmation number. They just don't want a black man in their hotel. I'm offended by that question and the person who asked it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smiley. There we go. What are your views on defunding the police and elevating a segment of the population over another?
Well, I'm not for defunding the police. I think that the primary responsibility of government, one of the primary responsibilities of government is to protect the innocent and to punish wrongdoing. And that is a very key job that comes down on all of us in any position of responsibility. To protect people who are innocent and to punish wrongdoing. Do they do that perfectly? And even as I listen to some of Paul's examples, even in his own life, no, they're just people. They're just like everybody else. And is there systematic bias in law enforcement, especially in local law enforcement? If there is, I don't see it. But I don't have that much interaction with them, and I don't know. But I don't see it. I don't see a systematic bias or prejudice especially here in this area. So no, I don't believe that, and I'm not supportive of that. Nor do I think that we need to compensate for past grievances and prejudices by continuing a system of preferential or grievances on both sides. And I don't think that's going to solve the problem. The problem is the human heart and people just do the wrong thing. And I think that when we start going down the road of, well, I was treated this way because I'm this color or I'm this thing, and so now you need to compensate for that. And you need to make up for that. I think for all of us, that is a road to disorder and to tyranny and to bitterness and to revenge. And so I would say that that's the wrong way to go. Yeah, I think that's much I'd like to say on it.
Very well. This question is for both of you. Mr. Smiley, you go first. Given the increasing restrictions on the Second Amendment in Washington State, do you agree with this direction? Other counties have officially spoken out against various state measures which your constituents do not support. Would you consider speaking against such measures once in office, especially if the public used the democratic process in a local vote to express their opinion?
I'm going first, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're talking about the Second Amendment. We're talking about would I speak out against infringements of the Second Amendment, just so I understand it right. Would I publicly speak out against it?
Yes, if your constituent.
If my constituents,
Yeah.
we know where the constituents are going to go with that.
Yeah.
No, yes, I would, and I'll just answer directly. I do believe that the Second Amendment does protect the right of individuals to own firearms, and it should not be restricted. And I agree with that, and I will speak out and publicly support that, irregardless of what the state does. And I think we see the direction the state is going in that direction, and it is a sobering thought for all of us when we continue to see the division of the cultures in our state. And the views of the people of this county and their understanding of the law and what is right are drastically diverging from the views on the west side. And so I'm with this county. That's where I'm at. And so, yeah, and I would support that. At the same time, I think we need to advocate and we need to work with the state and influence the state and everything we can on the state and federal level. And to make it a better place and to understand and support what what we believe the Constitution says. So I think that answers it pretty directly.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. That's not.
Very good.
The Second Amendment has two words that are often left out of the discussion, and that is well-regulated. It's interesting that in 1787 that the founding fathers even put those two words in there. People say that they don't need to be regulated. Well, they put in well-regulated. They didn't just put in regulated. They said well-regulated. It's an odd amendment. I think that when you look at the historical context of our Constitution, and let's say some of the time period, 30, 35, 40 years after its approval, and in 1787, and you read some of the letters and the correspondence, say with Mr. Jefferson, and between people who wrote him, and were already at that point in 1810, 1820, are already concerned about the Constitution and the amendments. And what did they mean? And to paraphrase some of Mr. Jefferson's responses, basically he said, you're a fool to think that what we wrote in 1787 was meant to be in stone and never to be changed. It fit what we needed and the dynamics of our society at that time. At some point, it will need to be changed because society's changed. That's from one of our founding fathers, 20, 30 years after he himself helped write the Declaration of Independence. Given that they put in well-regulated in the Second Amendment, I wonder what they would say today if standing there as they discuss it, everybody in the room had an AK-47 or an AR-15. You have to remember what they were holding in their arms back then. They weren't holding, even a 6-round pistol. It was kind of a single shot thing, and it was kind of a muzzle loader, some of them, and it wasn't quick. I can kill 8 to 10 or 100 people real quick. You could go out and have a duel, and there was only going to be one shot, one bullet fired by each guy, because that's all he had in his gun. And I think we need to use our intelligence, the God-given brains that we have, to understand that we live in a different time than 1787. We have access to things that they didn't have, and I don't think they could even comprehend in 1787. And, stepping into some other history, if you want to have an understanding of what happens to a culture for violence, it's very interesting to study South Africa. Up until into the 70s, South Africa didn't have TV. And so there's a beautiful history of social violence that is recorded in their history there without TV. And then TV is introduced. And now you get to see what happens to social violence. It goes through the roof. And what do we do in America? We spend a lot of time on TV. Our TV is fairly violent. Our internet is fairly violent. Streaming on your kid's phone can be fairly violent. And we wonder why we have such high rates
of crime and violence in our country, it's tied to the way we choose to live. It's tied to the way we choose to, whether you want to say inform ourselves, entertain ourselves, educate ourselves, because TV can be used for all of those things. But South Africa was a beautiful testing site to see what happens to the family structure when TV is introduced and the family structure crumbles. And so we in America we are sucked into that tube. We have bought into it, and now we buy guns at an unbelievable rate. And we wonder why we have violence. We wonder why we have people in Michigan plotting to overthrow a governor, kidnap a governor. I personally think the Second Amendment needs to be readdressed. Not necessarily removed, but it needs to be readdressed to reflect our modern time and our understanding of, we have a fairly good idea of what motivates people now and what they can do when they get their hands on the wrong things. I don't think any of us would deny that in 1787, kids, or in the 1800s, kids may have carried guns to school. They probably did. We don't even dream of that now. And when they do show up in school, what happens? Well, we have too many episodes of that, huh? We don't want to talk about it too much. No. But I think that I think the Second Amendment needs to be readdressed. And I'll leave it at that.
Very good. All right, we had some questions come in as you were both speaking. We will start with you, Mr. Mayor. Would you support economic development incentives, including tax increment financing and targeted tax incentives and/or exemptions?
Targeted tax incentives, what is that? Is that meaning the government gives a tax incentive to a business? Or, that's how I would understand it, meaning we would give them some type of tax credit if they invest certain ways.
Meaning if I were to open a ginormous coffee shop the size of Safeway, you would defer me paying for various infrastructure taxes and so forth to offset the cost to have me there.
This is another question that I've enjoyed reading some history on. And in this, after our Articles of Confederation were signed in 1781, and then we get our Constitution that we know in 1787, in the first 30 to 50, 60 years of our country, all of our state governments were heavily involved in private ventures, but in a very different way than we do now. Yes, they gave money, they did things, they helped maybe build roads or something, or help, with a dock, but they also got a share in the company. They had a vote on the board, they had board members that the public put on those companies, and they got a profit from that company when the company made a profit. That is the type of government-private cooperation that I see and I believe should happen. Right now, I see more so when we give these incentives to business, it's just passing on the taxes that the business was going to pay, passing it on to the taxpayers. I think a good example of that is look at how many states have gotten rid of all of the subsidies that they used to give for movies. Entice the filming Hollywood to come to your state and shoot their movies there. That was a big big promoter, that was a tax incentive that was promoted heavily in a lot of states, Washington included, in the late 1980s and 90s. And in a lot of the states, all of those are going away if they aren't already gone, because they were complete failures. And that type of tax giveaway, I don't agree with. In the example that was used, a big coffee shop, I need I need some addition on the street. I have difficulty with that. If you're going to be the business that is benefiting from all of that, why should the taxpayers pay for it? Again, we come back to maybe the very first topic, the smelter. Think of all of the businesses, industries that have taken place in America in the last 100, 200 years, but especially the last 100 years, that are now Superfund sites. If those businesses were so profitable, why is the taxpayer having to pay for this cleanup of the site? Why can't the business pay for it? I disagree with that type of public dollar giveaway. And so I would like to see if the county, if it becomes involved in some type of private-public partnership, it gets a share in the company or the business that it works with. Maybe it's a contractual one. We're in partnership for 5 years. And at 5 years, when you've reached this growth and you've gotten this, we've gotten our money out of it that we've put in, you've gotten what you need, you can now stand on your own, we're all happy. But I am against just outright giveaways.
Very good. Mr. Smiley, would you like me to repeat?
No, I think I get the gist of it.
Alrighty then.
I think I'm like with Paul a little bit on this. I'm pretty uncomfortable with that general idea, and I'm gonna speak in generalities. I think that either legislation or control or encouragement of businesses through the tax code or our tax system is a poor way to go about it. And in general, I think that our tax system, whether we're talking about property tax or income tax or any other kind of tax or even fees, I think it should be equally applied to all. And that should be an equal to all of the people of this county and the businesses that come in here. And again, I'm talking in generalities. I'm uncomfortable with, even as we talk about, well, are you for this kind of business or what kind of business should we have here? I'm uncomfortable with even that discussion. What I want to know is it legal under the law and are we treating everybody equally? Okay, so I would say I'm uncomfortable with that proposal that was just discussed. Sometimes I think the government, the county government even, though provides services and provides infrastructure, provides roads, it provides these things, and that there may be opportunities to partner with private entities in that, and there may be some give and take, even as Paul suggested, with some of that. And I do like the idea of the business parks where the government would say, hey, a government organization would say, hey, we're gonna come in, we're gonna put the roads in, we're gonna put utilities in, we're gonna do this, and encourage you to come to this area. And I think that's what we should do. We're basic government services. But to say, well, if you move here, we're gonna forego your property tax for this amount, or we're gonna do this or do whatever to encourage companies to come here. No, I'm not happy with that discussion, that direction.
Very good. Ready to go first now?
Yeah.
Outstanding. What do you see as the major challenge facing the county commissioners in the coming year? How would you work to meet that challenge?
I think probably it's gonna be the budget, but it's gonna be a toss-up, I keep doing it. It's gonna be a toss-up between the budget and the land use issues. of the major issues that's gonna face the county in the next year. Again, and as I said in the minor article, I think a lot of the budget decisions are being made right now, and the commissioners are trying to do their best for next year, and they're to a certain extent shooting in the dark. And so, but I think there's gonna be some repercussions from what has gone on in the past 6 months in our state. And if, I think we have our head in the sand if we don't come to that realization. And so I think it's probably gonna be the budget. It's probably gonna be some folks that are not happy with some hard decisions that are made. That's just the way I think. Beyond that, it's definitely gonna be the land use issue. I think we need to revamp the comprehensive land use plan in this county. We need to get a consensus of a majority of the people and then we also need some confident leadership in that process that makes that process a benefit for the whole county. And not that one particular area or one particular party benefits more than the other. And so those two things, I think, are gonna be what we face in the next year.
Very good. Mr. Mayor?
I agree with Brian. I think the budget and land use are going to be the two driving topics that the commissioners will have to deal with. Tied in with the budget, right now we're back to having the highest unemployment in the state. We could conceivably end up with homeless issues. Homelessness issues. We could end up with families that aren't getting enough food. And, the budget's not going to be able to support, unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult to support any type of safety net. I think we're going to be looking at stripping back to very bare bones budgets and departmental expenditures. And that's, I think, is going to be those are going to be the two biggest issues. How I wouldn't even want to guess if there's going to be any type of relief coming from the federal or the state level. Honestly, at this point, I think if there's any relief, it would have to come from the federal level, because the state level is going to be severely impacted too. And so if there's going to be any silver lining in the budget, it would be that if there is some support given back from the federal government at some point in the next 12 months. But outside of that, I think we are going to have to tighten our belts and probably lose a few pounds.
Next question. You are the decision makers for growth management. This goes to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
How will you balance the diverse interests of residents, businesses, and developers?
Develop the comprehensive plan, Paul, in 7 minutes. And Brian, you'll probably get the same shot.
Yes, he does.
I think the first is we do have to identify land use in the county. And the land use needs to reflect the 3 districts. South County and District 1 is very different than District 3. The other thing that's going to happen as you plan land use is that right now the county's population is growing, but it's probably slated mainly to grow in Districts 1 and Districts 2, which means District 3 grows even bigger. It's going to keep pushing further and further south. It's going to go south of Dalkina soon. Well, probably after the census. And so all of a sudden, District 3 is, again, you're taking up more and more space, but you've got, you don't have near as many people in all those square miles. And And so, you know, bringing the residents of the county together to be actively engaged in the planning of what happens in their district, I think is gonna be crucial to any comprehensive plan that is going to even begin to float in the county. If it doesn't take into I think that dynamic into account, we're gonna have a lot of unhappy voters. And so that would be the first step, and we're going to have to make hard decisions. We're gonna have to identify industrial, we're gonna have to identify wetlands, we're going to have to identify recreational use. How is Newport going to grow as a city? How is Meadowlake Falls hopefully going to grow as a city? Or Ione and Usconcusic. How do we interact with the tribe? And if they are successful with their purchase of the newsprint plant. All of those need to be asked, and I hate to say it, but that's the starting point, and then is fill in the details. I think one thing that we all will remember, and obviously we'll all want, we do like our rural atmosphere. And if we want to retain that, the projection is that the majority of the growth happens outside of the urban areas and it happens in the rural, which means we're going to, if we want the rural to stay rural, we're gonna have to put some restrictions on it. Property sizes, maybe they can't be subdivided anymore. But these are the hard choices we're gonna have to make. If we want rural and that atmosphere, we're going to have to put limits on what we do with it. If somebody can't come in and go, oh, I want that 80-acre parcel down to, 8/10s. If we want rural, we're gonna have to say at some point, Yakima County has done it, and my experience there is I bought a parcel that I was ultimately going to retire on. And given everything that's going on, I actually happened to find a buyer. And it's a completely rural, it's not even connected to power. It is, if you want to build on it, it is, you provide your own power. You're on your own. Unbeknownst to me, in the last comprehensive plan update of Yakima County, all the parcels out there, you cannot build a house on them now. You can get a county permit for a well, can't build a residence. You own it, it doesn't matter what size it is. 1 acre, 200 acres. If it's not built on right now, you're not getting a residence. Doesn't matter how long you've owned it, nothing. Yakima County made that hard decision, and it's impacting people. I was completely unaware of that when I sold my property. And I've been trying to work with the buyer to try and help him get some resolution. His only resolution is going to be legal. And I'd hate to think what the lawyer fees are for that. But there's another part of it. I think that my experience now, even though I'm not the landowner, but what happened in Yakima County, it needs to be part of our comprehensive plan. Every landowner needs to be given in their yearly notice about their property, what the property assessed value is and all of that. They need to be given what the full legal actions are that they can take on their property. That needs to be automatically a service that our county government gives to our landowners. I've spoken my mind with Yakima County planning, that I wasn't alerted to that about the parcel I used to own. And I want that to be part of our comprehensive plan, so that nobody is surprised when they own a piece of land or they buy a piece of land about what they can or cannot do on it. I think that will be also a critical part of our comprehensive plan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. I'm gonna leave it there, right there.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Same question.
Would you like me to repeat it?
Would you repeat it, please?
Absolutely. You are the decision makers for growth management. How will you balance the diverse interests of residents, businesses, and developers?
Well, I think that if there's anything out of this, even this discussion tonight, is that I think we might solve this problem sooner or later. And I think we're going down the right roads with this problem. I think first, there has to be engagement from a plurality of the community. That we have a distinct, okay, we have a plurality. It's not a minority group or individuals that say, I don't want this, I want this. And at the same time, we have confident and knowledgeable elected officials that are confident enough to make those hard decisions. And that they're like, I know the people in my district, I know the community, and I know this is gonna be the best thing for them. And they need to come up with an inventory of the available land and the wisest use of that land in the county. And I think we've talked about that, and there's been some talk about doing some inventories. We've done some similar things in the town of Medellin, and we're working on this in the town of Medellin, where we take a look and we look at our zoning and we look at everything, and even if it's forced upon us by the GMA, to take a look at this. Well, where would be a wise choice? If somebody would build a motel here, where would be a wise choice for that? If somebody wanted to manufacture here, where would be a wise choice for that? Like I said, the rub of the GMA is we have to plan. Okay, in planning, by nature, takes away a certain amount of freedom. If I'm gonna plan to go home tonight, that means I can't turn south, okay? So planning by nature takes away a certain amount of freedom. So we need to, in the GMA, we need to have some kind of a plan. I think it needs to give people as much freedom as we can, and we need to get that engagement from the greatest amount of people as we can, and the leaders need to have the confidence enough to overcome when we have a public meeting and a riot shows up and people aren't happy. And say, well, I know you're all not happy, but I'm gonna do this anyway, and we'll let the chips fly where they may. That kind of confidence. And so I think that's what's gonna be needed to properly parse those different groups.
Very good. One last one, it looks like. And it's to you first.
Okay.
What do you foresee Ponderay County looking like in 20 years? How do you want it to look when your term is finished, should you take it?
Well, that's a really good question. And I've been thinking about actually having some goals for, if I am elected. It's like, when I'm done, I want to see this accomplished. And I think for me right now, I want to see the comprehensive land use plan accomplished. What do I want the county to look like in 20 years? I would like at least a large portion of the county to continue to be rural in nature. And if we're talking about land use, I would also like it to continue to have a certain amount of freedoms and liberties. And that we don't live in a gated community and feel like we all have covenants on everything we do, and we gotta tell our neighbors, well, you can't do that. And so I think for me, I would like to see that balance of that we do still have some of the freedoms that I grew up with, and that I want my kids to have, of liberties. Of I want to have a business, I want to do this thing, and I don't really care what people want to do as long as they have some freedom in that. And I would like to see that for the county. And as far as goals, I would like to see the comprehensive land use plan taken care of. I would like to see us have a more diverse economy, with an economy that is not based on tourism, not based on some big industry that's gonna run our county, and not based on our retail stores, but based on a diverse level that would not be subject to a boom and bust cycle. And that we have I look at the economy of Colville, I look at the economy of Stevens County, I look at the economy even in Sandpoint, and I see an economy that is on a more diverse level. They have a little bit of all those things. And for our economy, I would like to see that. If I have that happen, I would say, hey, that's success. That we have mom and pop places, we have light manufacturing, we even might have some heavy industry, and we might have some tourism, we might have all of those things. And whatever we can do to encourage that, I would think that would be great. So I guess that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And I'm going to go back to you though, as soon as, Mr. Mayor. What do you foresee Pend Oreille County looking like in 20 years? And how do you want it to look when your term is finished?
Like Brian said, and I think, and the literature things I've put on my website and that I've included in my flyers, I believe in a diverse economy. I think Spokane, the city itself, the county itself too, but especially the city of Spokane and Spokane Valley, I think they provide a really good example of a diverse economy. The country is doing the spike thing and Spokane's doing the wave thing. There's high tech, there's manufacturing, there's tourism, there's military, and government, there's medical, there's education, there's research and development, there's construction. There's the service industry and entertainment industry. And in 20 years, some of the things I would like to see in Pend Oreille County in 20 years, I would love to see a high-tech center here, a high-tech research center that works in AI. And because I believe with the smart young people coming out of our schools, they can provide a lot of the creativity to grow those areas, to work in those areas. I'd like to see some recreation, call it, part of the tourism package. I would like to see manufacturing. I would like to see us as a county become known for recycling. There's a huge amount of recyclable material to be used and nobody's doing it. We manufacture, I think in the world, we manufacture enough plastic bottles to go halfway to the sun every year or something like that. And only 25% at best ever get recycled. 75% are left in landfills or in the ocean or something. Why aren't we using that? And that's, I believe, is just PET bottles, PET, so our water bottles. It's not the other types of plastic, that's just PET bottles. We know Patagonia and a number of clothing companies use recycled, fabrics made from those products or those materials from recycled bottles. I think we could become a research center for that and a production center. I think that the county, with the way the river flows through, I think we could become a test site for tidal generation. The county, the Pend Oreille is flowing at the right rate. I think that we could be in the research area of tidal energy generation. Maybe we are able to get rid of Box Canyon Dam then, and now we can put in a water park where Box Canyon is now. Spokane's been trying to get a water park for kayakers and that for 15, 20 years or more, and they're nowhere near it now. And I think it's something that it could go well here. And then they're in the service industry. It'd be fun to have. It'd be fun to have some nice restaurants. It'd be nice to have some cultural events going on, whether outdoors or indoors, associated with the tribe, associated with the Northwest. And that's what I would like to see in 20 years, or building out to that. At the end of 4 years as a commissioner, if I were to be elected, I'd like to see the infrastructure put in place to start that. That would be my goal. And that's going to be a huge, huge task given the economic problems that we're facing, that we're going to be coming out of. But at least the ideas that they would be out there, that they would be part of the comprehensive plan. that, this is where we see putting recreation, this is where we see light industry, research, artificial intelligence, high tech, things like that. All of that starting to be laid out in that comprehensive plan, so that we can start building out for 20 years.
Mr. Smiley, this one just came in. Addressing your comment of the opposition to the smelter being a vocal minority. 2 years ago at the Newport Gym, attended by about 700 people, the vast majority were opposed to the smelter. How would you explain the 2 petitions opposing the smelter were signed by over 3,000 individuals? A significant number from North County as claimed by the person asking.
Well, I think we'll let the election speak for that. I think sooner or later, some of these issues have to be addressed in the ballot box. And we can argue about, the opinions of people till the cows come home. Are they supportive of this or are they supportive of that? But I say that the majority of the voters in Monterey County would not agree with the comprehensive land use plan, and they would not agree with the prohibition on any industrial areas in the county. And again, I'm not gonna get into the weeds about the smelter. But when I talk about a vocal minority, I'm talking about groups just like that, showing up at public meetings at the last minute and what I would consider a riot, and I've experienced some of that, of people that have an agenda and to try to disrupt the process. They don't like the process, elect new commissioners, elect new planning commissioners. And so we'll let the election see how that comes out.
Very good. At this point, we're going to close. Give our candidates a chance to have closing statements. We'd like to thank Sherman Campbell Funeral and Cremation Services for making the facility here at Newport available to us. And here we go. Mr. Mayor, you have 7 minutes for conclusion.
I'd like to start with, as you said, I'd like to thank Sherwood Campbell for the use of their facility tonight, and everybody who's given up a Saturday night to help us get this out, and to everybody who's attended the debate online. Thank you for your attention and your willingness to give up a Saturday night. Trying to tie, everything we've talked about tonight into a cohesive closing statement. Growing up, I grew up in the ski area, White Pass. My dad was the operations manager. Today that would be called the operations manager. From 1962 to 1992. And we moved up to live in the ski area when I was 5 years old. And I think similar to Brian, and with his family doing homeschooling, we didn't do homeschooling, but from a young age, we were highly engaged by our parents, at the dinner table, at breakfast table, at any time, on all topics, on politics, on religion, on ski area management, on everything. We grew up with guns in the house, not in a safe. We were taught how to use them properly. We were taught how to use them safely. And we were taught to use our minds, to question. One of the examples I'd like to give of the relationship I had with my father. He wasn't too happy when I came out. It was not quite what he had expected from one of his sons. And we'd always had a little difference, more than a little, but we'd always had a number of differences on views of religion and things like that. And so, you know, we muddled our way through our father-son relationship after I came out. And we still loved each other, obviously, and got along. And then one day we were picking apricots at his house. And topic of religion came up. We've, you know, had a few lively debates about that. And it was one of the days, you know, it's a nice quiet day, it's a beautiful day to pick apricots, and the topic comes up, and do you open your mouth and, you know, as your father has, you know, not so much instructed you, but taught you, speak your mind, state your opinion. And he was upset that somebody he knew, you know, didn't have time on Sunday to take his children to church, but had time to take them motorcycle riding out in the woods and that. And I thought about it, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna put my foot in my mouth and ruin the day. So I said, well, you know, think about what he went through when he got married. His wife was divorced, had been abused by her, she had been abused by her ex-husband, documented with the police. But the church wanted them to go through a bunch of steps to annul her marriage. And that gentleman wasn't willing to go through with it. There was no reason in his mind that anybody should even question the hospital reports, the police reports of the abuse that happened, and that the church was asking, you know, extra steps to be taken was over the top. And my comment was, perhaps, you know, that has turned him off on the church. And I thought my dad was going to go off, and he looked at me and he goes, you know, I'd never thought of it in that way. He and I never had another argument ever again after that. And I'm not quite certain how that ties into the being a commissioner, other than my dad taught me to keep an open mind, to speak my mind, to speak honestly. And as a commissioner, that is one thing I will do, definitely. Yes, I have my opinions, but I also recognize, and this comes from being a ski official. When I'm at a ski race representing the rules, that's who I represent. Whether I like the rule or not is not my question. It's not my bailiwick to go, oh, well, I don't like that rule, I get to ignore it today. No, I have to open the rule book, and when somebody asks a question, I go, here's what the rule book says, these are our options. And so you have to be honest not only with the people you're working with, you have to be honest with yourself. And as a commissioner, yes, you have your opinions, but you're also recognizing and representing the statutes of the state, the statutes of the county.
You have a minute, sir.
You're recognizing the positions of your district and the county itself. And I promise I will do that. Thank you.
Closing arguments, Mr. Smiley.
Well, like Paul, I'd like to thank the folks here to hosting this tonight, and the people that have tuned in. I'm assuming there's some people tuned in. I hope my shrimp broil up in Medellin Falls, I hope it's done by now, and they've come and tuned in, some of them. I wanted to thank Paul too. I think the debate was productive tonight. And I think, I wish the presidential debate went this well.
Yeah.
And I want to thank him for his candidness and honesty that is obvious. And you know, we may have differences, but I think we're honest about our differences, and our opinions about things. And I think that that's as it should be. And so I'm gonna thank him for that. I would say that I would go back to my discussion about what makes a good county commissioner and what makes a good commissioner. I think I would go back to being an advocate for the county and especially for District 3 as a whole. That I love that place. I love the community I live in. I love the town of Medellin. I love that community. I've served there. And I think if you care for a place and you love a place like a person, you will serve. And you will do your best to make it better. And I think that's even a model for us, even in our neighbors and even in with one another. What can we do to make them better? And I think that's my desire for this place in serving as the commissioner. And that I think I could also, and I agree with what Paul has alluded to, that, you know, even when we don't always agree with the laws and the rules and the regulations, that we do our best to be impartial and to represent who we serve and what we stand for. And I think I could do that, and I hope to do that. And so with that, I'm gonna close.
Very well. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, candidates. Excellent debate.
Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Very enjoyable, actually, very enjoyable.
Thank you.
Are we off one, sir?